Okay, so in the previous lesson you saw that there's a difference as to how the parent-child relationship concept works inside the 3D view and on the Object tab in the Relationships panel. So what we're going to do now is take a look at how to work with this concept when we are working with bones. So to do this, we're going to have to go under File, do New, and just do Reload Startup File. You can press the A key to deselect and then A key to select everything, X, and delete everything. Go ahead and just zoom in a little bit, do Shift A, and add an armature with a single bone. Okay? Now, I'm going to explain a few things to you here. And again, this is going to get pretty technical. So this is the armature. Right now, it's in object mode, so this is at the object level. Notice that the world axis over here, we see the y-axis, the x-axis, and the z-axis. Now, if you go to the Object tab and enable the axis, you can see that what we're seeing is the axis for the armature. It's a local axis. So right now, it's going to match perfectly where the world axis is because this is how Blender adds objects to your 3D scene. So if you have the armature selected, and if you press the R key to rotate and press the Z key on the Z axis, you can see that we can rotate the armature and its local axis. Meaning that if you switch to edit mode, click on the body of this bone, X, and delete it, we're again dealing with the origin point. So if you go back to object mode, you can see that this is what we're dealing with. Okay, now click the 3D cursor right around here, do Shift A, and add a cube. Okay, notice that this is going to be the same concept. In order to see this concept a little better, if you go to the Object tab over here, we're just going to state to display it in wire. Go ahead and click on Axis. Okay, now notice that it's the same thing, right? If we have the cube selected and switch to edit mode, X, and delete the vertices, go back to object mode, you can see that it's the same exact concept, right? Because again, we're dealing with the objects. This is at the object level. So when we have this cube object selected, press the R key, press the Z key, you can see that we can do the same thing. See, there really is no difference between how this concept works when we're dealing with it at the object level. So just do X and delete this. Now do Shift C to place the 3D cursor over here. Go ahead and click on the armature over here. Okay, so now what happens is that when you switch to edit mode over here and do Shift A to add a bone, the bones are going to have their own axis. Okay, now we've already seen that if we want to see what the axis looks like for these bones, it's better to click over here and switch to stick mode so you can visualize it, and now you have to click on normal. So you can see that this is the axis for the bone. And over here on the bone tab, if you enable the axis, it's just going to show you the axis for your bone on its tail. See how this is matching? The blue is the Z, the red is the X, and the green is the Y. Okay, so we don't, when we enable this, that's what it shows. So it puts it on the tail. Now the question is, why does it even put it on the tail? Why doesn't it put it on the head? Now you'll see as to why this is, because it's basically the same concept as the origin point for the armature. Each bone will have its own origin point, and it's always going to be on the tail. That's what's going on. Now notice that the axis right now, the way it's rotated, it's actually matching the local axis of your armature, right? So the difference here is that you can see that the Y is going in this direction for the armature. So if we switch to edit mode over here and click on the tail over here, Now we're going to have to rotate this tail on the x-axis, right? So over here, if we press the R key and press the x-axis 2 times, we can make it rotate like this. So just type in -90, enter. Okay, so now you can see that if you zoom in, that this is the y-axis going in this direction. Click on the body so you can actually see this. See how this is going? So now if we switch to object mode, you can see that how this is matching. Okay, so in edit mode, you can see that basically when the bone is added, it's going to match its local object axis, but Blender adds the bone vertically. But when we rotate the bone on its side, we can see what it truly is. So it's really this point here that's acting like the origin for this bone. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at, okay, so if we click on the body of this bone and switch this to pose mode, this means that if we, let's say, want to add an object over here and make it a child of this bone, where would the connection point go, right? So if you do Shift A over here, let's actually do this with a, let's do it with the cube. It's easier to understand this because we can make it go into wire, okay? Now, I'm going to scale this down over here. Okay, so remember when we were looking at this concept of parent-child relationships with the sphere and the cube, we were doing it from the front view, and we had pressed the 5 key to go into ortho. So now if you do the middle mouse button, you can see that what we're doing is actually looking at this from the top view. Okay, so now having the cube selected, press the actually just click on the red arrow and move it over here and move it down. Okay, now if we click on this cube, press the Shift key down and click on this bone and do Control P, now we have to select on bone. Okay, so when you select it, you'll notice that the relationship line is going to the tail of the bone, meaning that it's treating the bone's tail as its origin point. Now, if you click on this cube, press the Shift key down, click on the bone, and when you do Control P and select an object, it's going to go directly to the armature. When you click it, you'll notice that where it connects to the armature's origin point. I'm going to press the 7 key to go to the top view. So if you click over here in object mode, you can see that it's going directly to the armature's origin point. Okay, now when we switch this to pose mode, click on the cube, press the Shift key down, click on this bone, do Control P, and we click on bone, it goes to the bone's tail origin point. The reason I'm showing this to you here is because now you can understand what's going to happen, right? So when we create the relationship, the parent-child relationship between an outside object to a single bone, it's going to connect in this way, right? In the 3D view, it's going to keep its offset. Now, when you click on this cube over here and go right over here, guess what's going to happen when we click on a bone, right? It's going to move. So what's going on over here, right? It's the same concept. Now, when you click on this bone and see where this origin point is, press the G key to move this right over here, right? And now because this bone is rotated, it's showing up this way. So this means that we have to press the R key to rotate this just like it was over here first, kind of like this. Press the G key and bring the origin point here. See, the cube ended up exactly where it was. So it's treating the tail of this bone as the center of the 3D grid. I understand what I'm showing to you here is a little complicated to understand, but this is how it works with bones. Okay? So now what we can do is take a look at this in another way. So go ahead and switch to object mode, do A to select everything, X and delete, do Shift C to put the 3D cursor right over here. Now press the 1 key to go to the front view. Now do Shift A and add a single bone. Okay, now notice that over here again it's the same concept, right? It's just going to place the bone vertically. Now since the 3D cursor is over here, we can do Shift A and now add a circle. Okay, now again, when you have the circle selected, go to its object tab and just enable the axis. Now go ahead and click on this bone and switch to pose mode. Now you already know what's going to happen, right? If you click on this object, press the Shift key down and click on this bone, do Control P and select bone, you'll see that the relationship line is going to go from the origin of the circle all the way to the tail. The only way to see this is press the Z key. And if you rotate a bit, you can see that it's behaving the same exact way. Now remember when we had the sphere and the cube, and when we actually rotated and scaled the sphere first, then we made the cube the child of the sphere, then we went over here and clicked it so the cube took on the parent's rotation and scale. So it's going to do the same thing to this object, right? So this means that if you click on this object and click on bone over here, it's going to flip, right? Why is it doing this? Because it's the same thing, right? It's treating this point here as the origin, meaning the tail. And it's going to basically rotate like this. Meaning that if you click on this bone and go to edit mode, go to the right view, click on the tail, press the G key, press the Control key to snap the bone to the grid and left click like this, you can see that when we rotate it and now switch to pose mode, it'll snap over here, right? Because this is how, as we've already seen, how the bone is, right? Blender just puts it vertically. So it causes a bit of confusion when you're trying to understand this. So now when you click on this and X this out, right? Now if you click over here, press the Shift key and click on the bone, do Control P, it's going to keep the offset. But if you click over here, and let's say in this case, we'll just X it out. We'll just do armature, bone, and bone. It's going to jump over here. Okay? Let's actually X this whole thing out. Click on this bone. Now notice, actually let me point this out, that when you are actually, if you click on this, press the Shift key down, click on the bone, it has to be in pose mode. If you switch to edit mode on the bone and do Control P over here, it's saying connected, right? Set the active bone as the parent of the selected bone. So we're not working with bones. If you click on connected, there's nothing that's going to happen over here, right? Because if you switch back to pose mode over here, click on this guy, you'll see that there's nothing going to happen. So you should be aware of these type of things here. Blender will display these menus regardless if you're doing it right or wrong. Okay, you have to have two bones for that feature to work in edit mode. You can only create parent-child relationships between bones in edit mode. Right? So you cannot select an object, click on the bone and switch to edit mode and somehow make this object the child of this bone in edit mode. It must be done in pose mode. Anyways, so this means that if we click on pose mode over here and actually if we scale this bone over here, click on this object, press the Shift key down, click over here, do Control P, and now do bone, right? So if you click on the bone, only press the G key, you can see that it is the parent. So if we click over here and click on bone, you'll see that it's behaving the same way. It's taking its rotation and scale. Okay, so anyways, this is how this concept works when you are working with bones. Okay. So if you want to keep the offset intact, you have to do it in the 3D view. But if you come over here, it's just going to behave the way I've shown it to you. So it's the same behavior when you're working with bounds, and it's the same behavior when you're working with objects. Anyways, go ahead and just reload this file. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.